Chad Daybell and his wife Tammy were living a simple life in Fremont County, Idaho. Married for more than 2 decades with 5 adult children, everything seemed very normal. But what may have appeared normal from the outside was about as unusual and unforeseeable as possible. While living in their home in the fall of 2019, there were 2 dead bodies buried in Chad and Tammy's backyard. The bodies of J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, a brother and sister who had recently moved to Idaho from Arizona with their mother, Lori Vallow. Lori Vallow moved to Idaho along with her children and brother Alex after Alex shot and killed her husband, Charles. She chose Idaho because she was having an affair with Chad Daybell. After her children were murdered and buried in the yard, Tammy died at home in bed 10 days after someone tried to shoot her outside her home. Then 17 days after Tammy died, Lori and Chad got married in Hawaii. After an intense investigation, Lori was charged in connection with the murders of her children and Tammy. A jury convicted her. Now Chad is on trial facing triple murder charges and the death penalty. Tonight, we have the latest from the courtroom, plus we'll look at the shooting attempt on Tammy Daybell and Lori's niece's husband as we continue our investigation of the Doomsday couple. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. You couldn't make this up. If you made this up and tried to sell it as a script, nobody would buy it. They say, this is ridiculous. But it's not ridiculous. It's the reality of what happened. The trial's continuing, but I want to begin tonight with Alex Cox, Lori's sister. Alex Cox, the so-called hitman, really suffered a sad death. He was alone on the toilet when he passed away. He was discovered by his stepson. His wife's son found him, called 911, described the scene. It wasn't pretty. But at that point, there were a lot of things happening. A lot of things happening that made a lot of people question his death. But up until this point, it's been ruled as a very sad death from natural causes in the bathroom. But while he was living, Alex Cox lived a very violent life. What we've learned about what he was involved in, we know that he served time in jail for tasing Lori's third husband, Joseph Ryan. Below the belt is where he tased him, did time for it. We also know that he shot and killed Lori's fourth husband. Shot and killed him. Now, his role in all of this, everyone believes he was acting as the hitman. The hitman for this cult. This hitman for Lori and potentially Chad as well. That's what this trial's about. Brandon Boudreaux was married to Lori's niece, and we know that he was shot at. I mean, he was absolutely like shocked, Brandon Boudreaux was, when he was shot at. He testified today, spoke a lot about it. We're going to get into this shooting. The question is, was that Alex Cox that shot at Brandon Boudreaux? You know who else was shot at? Was Tammy Daybell. Or there was an attempt for someone to shoot at her. We're going to talk about those details tonight as well, because that was another part of what happened today during the trial of Chad Daybell. Like I said, big day inside the courtroom. Let's take a look at some of those big moments.
Would you please explain to the jury, what was it that you told Detective Hermosillo in June of 2020 about Chad?
I was really angry that he called Melanie and told her not to talk to the police.
Why were you angry?
Because when someone makes a call like that, there's something wrong.
Do you happen to recall anything else that you told to Detective Hermosillo in that interview about your feelings about Chad?
that he was manipulative, gets people's confidence, and then he uses that confidence for his favor.
Do you recall whether or not Mr. Daybell ever indicated to you the status of Tammy's health?
Yes, I was asking him about his marriage, about what kind of wife and mother, and then he told me that she was going to be passing because was given a dream or a vision that she was going to be passing. And then I asked him about her health, and he said she was healthy.
Have any of your own personal visions or spiritual experiences ever led you to think that you personally have any kind of superpowers?
No.
I want to talk a little bit about Melanie Boudreaux and Lori Vallow. Did you have occasion to observe their relationship?
Yes, I did.
What was that relationship like?
Melanie's mom died when she was young, and she had an awesome stepmom, but I think she... earlier in my marriage, she just didn't love going to church. It wasn't her thing. But in the fall of 2018, she got very excited about religion and going to church. And she started talking about how she set this goal that she was going to go to the temple every single day.
What else changed in your wife's religious demeanor or attitude?
At that time, she started going to these things that she was calling firesides, but weren't things that I would call a fireside.
In your church, if someone says fireside, what do you normally think of?
So inside of our faith, there's a leader of like a group of we call it a ward, so like a group of people who live in a certain geographic area. At times they might, besides going to church on Sunday, they might set up a meeting that they think might lift us up or encourage us spiritually, and it might be outside the normal times you go, and so they usually do them in the evenings, and they call them firesides. But she was just going to what was going on in there so I could give her better perspective, but she let me know I wasn't welcome at them.
After Charles Vallow died, what happened with your relationship with your wife?
We got divorced.
What was the situation between you and Melanie like at this point, at the end of September, beginning of October of 2019?
It had changed quite a bit. Since June, she just stopped talking to me. We could text, but barely. There was no connection anymore, and she's very cold to me.
Did anything happen at the beginning of October of 2019 that affected that situation?
Yes.
What was that?
On October 2nd of 2019, someone parked in front of my house and shot at me and tried to kill me.
Unbelievable. Joining me now outside the courthouse in Boise, Idaho, Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft. Kelly, great to see you tonight. What another powerful day inside that courtroom. Let's talk first about this attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux, Lori's niece's husband.
Hi there, Vinny. Yes, he got right into it on the stand today, Brandon Boudreaux, and said October 2nd. That was the day that someone tried to kill me. They tried to shoot me. They tried to kill me. So he said that right away. And throughout his testimony, you could tell a lot of people were interested in what he had to say because the way his testimony went and was telling this story, how he was married to Melanie. They appeared to have a great life with children. And then all of a sudden, Melanie began to change. At first, she had fallen away from the church. Then she was getting right back into wanting to go to church, and more than she ever had, wanting to go to temple all the time, which Brandon, on the witness stand today, said it was a little bit abnormal for someone to be going to temple every single day. Then you heard him talk about the fire. Home from the gym, pulled up, noticed this Jeep. At first, he didn't know whose Jeep it was, and he noticed the wheel on the back of the Jeep was missing, and then some other things seemed out of place, and then someone pulled down the window, and he saw the gun, and they tried to kill him, according to his testimony today. Then he started talking about how he started to really question a lot of things, and he then began to Google the Doomsday couple and Googled Chad Daybell. Let's listen to what he had to say about that.
I wanted to figure out more, so I got into Google and searched for Chad Daybell because I didn't know him, so I wanted to see more information about this person that was sending the information.
Right. And what did you find?
When I typed his name in, an obituary popped up for a Tammy Daybell, and something inside of me was just shocked. I was just...
Did you provide that information to law enforcement?
I did, yes.
And Vinny, so he saw that information, the obituary of Tammy Daybell, and also saw a bunch of other things, including his own name in these emails. He received these emails from Charles Vallow when Charles Vallow had got a hold of some of these emails when he was still alive, and he was really questioning his wife's, Lori's, mental health. And then Brandon Boudreaux got a hold of these emails from Charles. And even Brandon Boudreaux said on the witness stand today that there was a letter next to his name. It talked about light and dark, and he was the letter D.
Ooh, that's not good. Not good when you get the D, the dark. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Brandon Boudreaux also testified about learning that Tylee and JJ were found and were discovered. What was that like?
He became very emotional, Vinny, during this testimony because, again, he had talked about in the beginning of his testimony how the life used to be and how even doting Lori used to be around his children and JJ and Tylee, and then how at one Christmas, Melanie Gibb all of a sudden was there, and he said she was a stranger to most of the people there because it used to just be a family event. Now at Christmas, there's this woman named Melanie Gibb, and he talked about then how after all of this, they really started to be concerned about JJ and Tylee. So let's listen to some of his testimony regarding that.
I just remember somebody from, I think, Rexburg, calling just to let me know that they had found what they were pretty sure was the kids.
Okay. Once you got that information, what did you do?
The next day was my wedding, so I was getting remarried. So I got married, and shortly after that, I just felt like I needed to go up to Rexburg. I don't know what for. I just felt like I should, so I drove up there. They asked me to identify JJ.
Very tough talking to him today. We got a chance to talk with him afterwards. Vinny didn't go on camera, but just everything that he went through and testifying about it today, as he did at Lori Vallow Daybell's trial, not an easy situation for him.
No, it seems like a regular guy, like a family guy, and everything just got turned in his life upside down and is in the middle of all this, and people are shooting at him. Kelly Craft, live tonight in Boise, Idaho, Court TV legal correspondent. Thank you so much. I know we'll speak again. I want to bring in a special guest right now, Lori Daybell's cousin and author of the book, I Walked Through the Fire to Get Here, and host of the Midlife Revolution podcast, Megan Connor, back with us. Megan, thanks so much for joining us. Great to see you tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with Brandon and Melanie. It just seemed like they were like a great young couple living a very, very normal life. And then everything got turned upside down here.
Yeah, I remember keeping in touch with Melanie a lot on Facebook. I loved to see her kids grow up on social media, basically, since we weren't in the same area. And it was really fun to see her, developing as her own woman. She was running marathons and she was, really healthy and fit. And it seemed like she and Brandon had a really charmed life. They seemed really happy. The kids seemed really happy. And so I was really, really disturbed to hear some of the accusations that Melanie was making against Brandon. And again, it just started to feel really familiar to things that have happened in my family before, when Lori started accusing Joe of abusing the kids and then accusing Charles of having an affair and wanting family members to have no contact with the person who was being accused.
So when all this is developing here, does Melanie also sort of distance herself from the rest of the family?
Well, I wasn't really in person to observe that. As I said, we didn't live in the same area, and so I kept up with her on social media, but I didn't know, if she was isolating herself from other people. The first thing that I heard about it were, she was making some posts on Facebook accusing Brandon of all kinds of things and saying that her kids were, that she wasn't having access to her kids.
All right, Megan Connor is going to stay with us. We've got a lot more to talk about tonight. Coming up, we're going to break down this attempt on the life of Brandon Boudreaux, plus coming up next hour. In West Richland, Washington, a desperate Amber Alert and manhunt for an accused double murderer and rapist. Elias Huzar is accused of murdering his ex-wife and underage girlfriend and fleeing with their one-year-old. Tonight, the latest in the search.
We are making progress in locating the suspect and will continue our efforts until he is located.
This is an innocent woman. She didn't do it.
It's a controversial case that's divided a community.
Karen Reed is accused of murdering her police officer boyfriend.
Prosecutors say she ran him over on purpose and left him to die in the cold.
But Reed claims that she's being framed.
It smells suspicious.
After years of legal fireworks, will the truth finally be revealed?
The end game is to figure out who killed John O'Keefe and hold these people responsible.
The killer or cover-up murder trial. Live coverage begins next week, only on Court TV.
Cop.
Hey, buddy, I never even got your name. What is it?
It's Brandon Boudreaux.
Brandon? I just want to verify only one shot, right?
One shot.
That you heard of and that you know of, right?
Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm asking is I just want to make sure it didn't go anywhere else. I'm pretty sure it's stuck in the frame there.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure there's nothing else that I need to be looking for either.
One shot. I drove real quick. They were surprised, I think, as much as I was.
Okay.
They probably thought they were going to hit me. I mean, it was
okay.
important.
This is insanity. Like, Brandon Boudreaux is like a regular guy, goes to the gym, comes home, and then someone takes a shot at him? Someone takes a shot at him. We think it might be Alex Cox, Lori's brother and the hitman. Let's take a listen to his testimony as he describes what happened.
On October 2nd of 2019, someone parked in front of my house and shot at me and tried to kill me. As I was driving, I noticed a few things. My house, the driveway, there was like a Jeep parked right on the edge of it, where I would normally turn in, and there was nothing parked there usually. I'd only been there for a few days, but so far it was always, there was this van there, and like the Jeep was parked with its like bumper basically on the van. And it just looked at that place. It had a Texas license plate. There was no tire on the back of the Jeep. And you know how when you open and close a Jeep, there's like little tabs on the window. Those were sitting on the outside of it. So it just looked awkward. It just was awkward enough that I noticed it right as I turned around the corner. The window opened up, and I saw a gun and a silencer. And I was my window shattered. I heard a bang, all kind of in the same amount of time. And my immediate thought was just, I'm getting shot at. And I, instead of turning my wheel and into my driveway, I just pushed the gas and drove straight. Later, as I was thinking through everything and talking with other people that were close to it, I realized that I felt really confident that the Jeep was Tylee's Jeep.
Did you take any other steps to identify that Jeep?
Yeah, I was an insurance agent at the time, and previously Charles had given us the VIN number, and so I just gave that VIN number to law enforcement.
Unbelievable. He could have been killed. This was an attempted murder. Still with me, Lori Vallow Daybell's cousin, Megan Connor, and joining us now, forensic death investigator, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, host of the Body Bags podcast, Joseph Scott Morgan, and the TikToker behind The Recap with Julie. Julie Urquhart is with us. Great to see everyone. Thank you for being here. Megan, are you convinced that was Alex?
Yes, absolutely.
Has to be, right? You're talking about the Texas plates, the Jeep. Joseph Scott Morgan, what do you think of this attempt on Brandon Boudreaux's life?
Markedly amateurish. This is not what you would expect out of somebody that perhaps had practiced this before, engaged in this behavior. It's also interesting that the individual that did the shooting, according to Mr. Boudreaux, never dismounted from the Jeep. They stayed within. So if they're using, say, for instance, a semi-automatic weapon, when they fire this thing, there's a high probability, particularly if he fired from within the cab of the vehicle, that shell casing would eject inside and he could continue to possess that shell casing. As you well know, Vinny, we work cases where you've seen the little yellow markers everywhere. We go out and collect those to try to tie those back to a specific weapon. But it does, it's almost like the individual didn't have the intestinal fortitude to approach him. He's already gone to the trouble of equipping the weapon, according to Mr. Boudreaux, with a suppressor, which knocks down the sound. So why not take the final steps where you're going to get out of the vehicle, walk up to him, and execute him? It's very strange.
Now, let's get into some more of the connections now, right? So Brandon Boudreaux sees the Texas plates. Charles bought Tylee Jeep in Texas. Electronics analyst from the FBI testifying about what Lori Daybell was Googling.
And then if we move down to the September 30th one, can you talk a little bit about that?
How to get the back seat out of my Jeep Wrangler. Jeep Wrangler JK rear seat removal, how to DIY.
Okay, now, Julie, let me put this together with another piece of evidence. So that's September 30th. The shooting is October 1st. Then October 2nd or 3rd, Lori and a man are seen here. This is surveillance video from the storage unit that Lori rented. And there's the seat. They're putting a seat back and going back in and getting a tire to put back. I mean, putting the pieces together very well. But looking at that, do you think that's Alex or Chad?
That was a hard one for me. I couldn't figure out if I thought Chad or Alex for that. First, I thought it was definitely Alex, and then I kind of went back and forth. Either way, I think all of them were completely thick as thieves in this, and all of them were involved in this. Whether or not that's Alex or Chad, they all knew what was going on. He was their hitman, but it looks a little bit like Chad in that sometimes.
Yeah, Megan, any thoughts on whether that's Chad or Alex?
It's hard to tell because the video is a little spotty as far as the speed goes, but it does look a lot like Alex's gait, if I'm going by that, and it's absolutely 100% the way that Lori walks.
Yeah, no doubt that that's Lori. And I think that it's Alex's truck that's out there too that may have been seen on video outside as well. So unbelievable. And Joseph Scott Morgan, you know, this is like planned and plotted. This hit is planned and plotted to the point that, okay, how are we gonna do it? We're gonna do it in the Jeep, and they're in Idaho. Then they're driving all the way down to Arizona to commit this hit, and then driving all the way back. I mean, you've got to be like a crazed killer mindset to do this.
Yeah, I think so, and certainly focused at the task at hand. Isn't it interesting that Mr. Boudreaux had mentioned that the vehicle was absent the tire, but yet is that tire contained within there? Were they attempting to throw them off on a vehicle script? I think that's kind of intriguing here as well. Now, why in the world the back seat would be out of that thing, I have no idea. Storage, perhaps, concealment of some kind. I don't know. But yeah, it's certainly interesting. It goes to preparedness. And again, I go back to this idea that was mentioned just a second ago. He didn't just show up with a weapon; he showed up with a suppressed weapon, according to Mr. Boudreaux. Some thought has been put into this, I would think.
Julie, and to me, it's this incredible contrast, right? Like, you've got a life, you've got a husband, you've got small children, and somehow, some way, Lori has pulled her, Melanie, into this world, so much so that now Brandon Boudreaux becomes a target.
Absolutely. And the fact that he was living his normal everyday life, he's taken his kids to school, he's gone to the gym, and just happens to spot this Jeep, luckily, in my opinion, behind the van to slow down enough to think, what's going on here, when the shots came out? Like, he had absolutely no idea this was coming. It just seems like completely blindsided him.
Yeah, because when you think of Charles, Charles had been threatened by Lori in the past, and we've seen those on body cam where he's talking about these threats, and he knew that she had broken down. But Megan, I don't know, was it clear to Brandon, do we think, that Melanie had drifted that far into wherever she is?
I think it became clear to him obviously after this incident. Melanie was the only person who had that address. And I can shed a little bit of light on the Jeep. I think that, to your point about Alex being cowardly, I think they removed the back tire and the back seat so that Alex could sit in the back of the Jeep and aim from there and not be seen or detected.
Use remove the stuff so you have room, and you just kind of crouch in the back there, roll down that back window. Now the tire is no longer in the way, and you get a so-called clear shot, but not successful, thank goodness. Megan, do we have any update? Do we know how Brandon Boudreaux's kids are and Melanie, and how all that's working out between them? I know they had some court appearances years ago where they were battling a little bit. Any idea how that's worked out for the children?
Well, I hope the children are doing well. I know that there was sort of a protracted custody battle, understandably, because of Melanie's proximity to Lori. There definitely were some motions filed to try and get the children farther away from Melanie for a time. I believe at this time that Melanie does still have access to the children, although I'm not in touch with her or them, so I can't really speak to exactly what's going on there.
When we come back, all our experts staying with us. We're going to talk about the attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell. This one, I still don't understand it, because Chad was home at the time, and his reaction to all of this is going to leave you like baffled, like what's going on with Chad Daybell. We'll be right back.
I was getting stuff out of the back seat of my car, and suddenly he was there, and he had a paintball gun, and he was aiming, and like he was going to shoot at me.
She told me that she had just got back from grocery shopping, was getting groceries out of the back seat of her car, noticed a male standing at the rear of the vehicle. She confronted him and asked him what he wanted. He didn't say anything. He just held up the gun, and she heard two pops and then yelled for her husband, Chad. At any time during your interaction with Tammy, did Chad attempt to talk to you in any way? No.
anything about that unusual to you?
I thought it was kind of odd that she had just been like victimized and he wasn't taking any actions to protect her in a way, I guess, but that was just my thoughts personally.
Odd, right? This is your wife of 2 decades. Someone takes a shot at her and it's like, oh, I'm just another day in East Idaho? What? What? Let's take a listen to the 911 call made by Tammy Daybell after this happens.
Fremont County Sheriff's Office. Hi, I need to report something. Okay, go ahead. What's the address? Okay, at 202 North, 1900 East. The corner with the blinking yellow light on Salem Highway. Is it a suspicious person? Yes. Okay, what was he wearing? He was all dressed in black and he had a ski mask on. And he's at the blinking light now is where you saw him? No, he's gone now because I pulled up into our driveway and I was getting stuff out of the back seat of my car, and suddenly he was there, and he had a paintball gun, and he was and like he was going to shoot at me. And I kept asking him what he was doing because I could tell it was a paintball thing. Okay. And then he just kept doing it, so I yelled for my husband, and then he took off running around the back of my house. Okay, give me just 1 minute. Stay on the line with me. Okay. And that was North 1900 East? Yes. Okay. You know what direction he was going? He went behind my house and it's so dark out here, and I just went in the house and got my husband and son, and then they went out and looked and he was long gone by then. Okay. So he was on the north side of my house is where he went to get away. Okay. He didn't say anything, or he just kept like he was holding the gun like he was, had a rifle and just shooting at me, so. But nothing came out of the gun either, so I don't think it was loaded. Okay, and what is your name, ma'am? My name is Tammy Daybell. Okay, I will pass your information on to my deputies. We actually just had a previous call about this individual, so they're out in the area looking now. Okay, yeah, I think it was my son-in-law who lived diagonal from us that called you guys already. Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure it got reported. So, let's see. And what's your son-in-law's name? Joseph Murray. Okay, yep, it was him. Okay. So, all right, I have a deputy that will be out at your home here shortly. Okay, thank you. Yep.
If she only knew what was really happening there. Let's put up a map so you have a better idea of the area where they live and what she's describing. And so there's the Daybell house. Remember, in the backyard, that's where they were pulling up all of the bodies in the pasture there on the side. But you can see where where the driveway is, and then running around the north side of the house, that arrow's what she's sort of describing. He's dressed in all black, he's got a ski mask on, and he runs away after pointing the gun and seemingly attempting to shoot her. She keeps saying paintball gun, but I'm not buying paintball gun. Megan Connor, Joseph Scott Morgan, Julie Urquhart's still with me. Joseph Scott Morgan, what do you think happened here?
You know, Vin, one of the things that struck me about this, I was thinking that the individual that perpetrated this, if they were in fact connected to everything, I mean, this spectrum that we deal with when it comes to Daybell and Vallow, maybe they were testing the waters, maybe they were threatening, because I'm with you, man. I mean, I don't know how she could make that assessment necessarily accurately. Maybe she was wanting to think that it was a paintball gun.
Maybe Chad volunteered it to her. Yeah, it was probably a paintball gun.
Yeah, it could be, just kind of suggested. And, the bore on those things is a significantly larger than a regular pistol. So, and that would go to proximity, but you're talking about darkness. She even made that comment, that it was dark out here. And what a portent of things to come if she only knew. Horrible circumstances, particularly with Tammy Daybell.
Absolutely. Let's take a listen to the detective who testified and responded and spoke to Chad when Tammy did die just 10 days after this attempt on her life.
He had told me that about midnight, Tammy had woken up with a coughing fit, and he said she had vomited on the bedroom floor and then had moved into the bathroom down the hallway and had continued vomiting. And he said he got up to help her clean up and then put her back to bed. And then they both went back to sleep. And then at approximately 5:40 a.m., he had felt the blankets shift off of him in bed and had woken up, and he said that he had thought Tammy had fallen off the bed. So he told her to get back on the bed, and then when she didn't answer him, he stood back up, turned the lights on, and found that she was unresponsive. He indicated that she had fallen partially off the bed because her feet were wrapped in the blanket and the sheets, and so her feet were still up on top of the mattress, but the side of her head was on the floor.
Julie Urquhart, that's kind of a bizarre description. And the thing about this, it's about timing too, in context. This is 10 days after someone in a ski mask is pulling a gun on her.
Yeah. And the fact stands out to me that she's in her driveway, and instead of immediately panicking when you see someone with any sort of rifle, she immediately goes to paintball gun and just yells for her husband and is asking the person, what are you doing? What's going on? Instead of immediately running. And like you said, 10 days later, she's found deceased in her bed from a very odd description, in my opinion, like saying her feet were still entangled, but half her body was out, but yet she was already deceased. Like, I don't know how that would have even been possible.
No. Justice Scott Morgan, I want you to chime in on that, on the way she's being described, being found, and on the floor.
Yeah, very, very odd indeed. I always hearken back to what the kids had said. I can't remember which one. But, this idea that she had this kind of frothy edematous cone that was presenting from her nose and her mouth, and that she was cyanotic. I think she was slightly purple. And that's something that you see in one of two cases. You either see somebody with congestive heart failure, that does happen. And we're talking about outside of a water environment because we have drownings and all that sort of thing. But then the other thing is asphyxia. And that's immediately what you go to. And, people have talked a lot about Tammy. And I have a personal bias here. I've gotten to know this case so well, particularly as it applies to Tammy. She seems like a person that you would want to meet and that you would want to know, and that she wound up this way is so horrific. And then everything that followed, decisions that were made about her examination that could have made this a lot more simple. But, the fact that someone had acted upon her and that the death was eventually ruled as an asphyxiation. We're not talking about an airway blockage. We're talking about that someone purposefully, prevented her from breathing. And that's what's so horrific about this. Within this home that she had created with this person and with all of these kids, and it looks like, a Hallmark card. It seems very beautiful on the outside. And the terror that's involved in all of this, it's really hard to take the measure of it. And I'm sure the investigators have had a very difficult time with this case all the way through.
Oh, absolutely. And Megan, your cousin Lori's brother, Alex Cox, do you believe he was the one with the gun who confronted Tammy? And what are your thoughts about him being in the area the night that she died?
I do believe that it was him. I also believe that, he was obviously one of the least successful hitmen in the history of the world, as far as we know. Good for Brandon. But I think, one of the things that stands out to me about that call, or about the testimony of the investigator, is that she says Chad told Tammy to get back in bed. He didn't say, Tammy, are you okay? He told her to get back in bed. I think that sort of speaks to the dynamic of their relationship. It makes it very plausible that when Tammy came yelling for Chad and said, somebody just tried to shoot at me, Chad probably said, oh, it's probably just some kids with a paintball gun. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Because, Julie, kids in the neighborhood always dress in all black and with a ski mask and go around at night and confront women. Like,
whose mother wouldn't let them do that, right? With their paintball guns. Like, it makes absolutely no sense at all. And for him to, we all believe, allegedly know that this was happening, possibly plan that this was happening, and his children are home. Like, it speaks volumes on Chad and how he felt about his family.
And let's not forget, this is a death penalty case. If he's found guilty, this jury will make that decision as well. Megan Connor, Joseph Scott Morgan, Julie Urquhart, thank you all so much. I appreciate your time, your insight, and we'll see you again really, really soon.